Abolition. Today.
From The Reason Why the Colored American is Not in the World's Columbian Exposition by Ida B. Wells, 1862 to 1931. Read by Max Parthas. Chapter 3. The Convict Lease System. The Convict Lease System and lynch law are twin infamies which flourish hand in hand in many of the United States. They are the two great outgrowths and results of the class legislation under which our people suffer today. Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Nebraska, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Washington claim to be too poor to maintain state convicts within prison walls. Hence, the convicts are leased out to work for railroad contractors, mining companies, and those who farm large plantations. These companies assume charge of the convicts, work them as cheap labor, and pay the states a handsome revenue for their labor. 9/10 of these convicts are Negroes. There are two reasons for this. One, the religious, moral, and philanthropic forces of the country, all the agencies which tend to uplift and reclaim the degraded and ignorant, are in the hands of the Anglo-Saxon. Not only has very little effort been made by these forces to reclaim the Negro from the ignorance, immorality, and shiftlessness with which he is charged, but he has always been and is now rigidly excluded from the enjoyment of these elevating influences towards which he felt voluntarily drawn. In communities where Negro population is largest and these counteracting influences most needed, the doors of the churches, schools, concert halls, lecture rooms, young men's Christian associations, and women's Christian temperance unions have always been and are now closed to the Negro who enters on his own responsibility. Only as a servant or inferior being placed in one corner is he admitted. The white Christian and moral influences have not only done little to prevent the Negro from becoming a criminal, but they have deliberately shut him out of everything which tends to make for a good citizenship. To have Negro blood in the veins makes one unworthy of consideration, a social outcast, a leper even in the church. Two Negro Baptist ministers, Reverend John Frank, the pastor of the largest colored church in Louisville, Kentucky, and Reverend C.H. Parrish, president of the Eckstein Northern University at Cane Springs, Kentucky, were in the city of Nashville, Tennessee, in May when the Southern Baptist Convention was in session. They visited the meeting and took seats in the body of the church. At the request of the association, a policeman was called and escorted these men out because they would not take the seats set apart for colored persons in the back part of the tabernacle. Both these men are scholarly, of good moral character, and members of the Baptist denomination, but they were Negroes, and that eclipsed everything else. This spirit is even more rampant in the more remote, densely populated plantation districts. The Negro is shut out and ignored, left to grow up in ignorance and vice. Only in the gambling dens and saloons does he meet any sort of welcome. What wonder that he falls into crime? 2. The second reason our race furnishes so large a share of the convicts is that the judges, juries, and other officials of the courts are white men who share these prejudices. They also make the laws. It is wholly in their power to extend clemency to white criminals and mete out severe punishment to black criminals for the same or lesser crimes. The Negro criminals are mostly ignorant, poor, and friendless, possessing neither money to employ lawyers nor influential friends. They are sentenced in large numbers to long terms of imprisonment for petty crimes. The People's Advocate, a Negro journal of Atlanta, Georgia, has the following observation on the prison showing of that state for 1892. Quote unquote, "It is an astounding fact that 90% of the state's convicts are colored. 194 white males and 2 white females, 1,710 colored males, and 44 colored females. Is it possible that Georgia is so prejudiced that she won't convict her white lawbreakers? Yes, it is just so, but we hope for a better day. George W. Cable, author of the Grandissimes, Dr. Sevier, etc., in a paper on the Convict Lease system, read before Prison Congress in Kentucky, says, in the Georgia Penitentiary, in 1880, in a total of nearly 1,200 convicts, only 22 prisoners were serving as low a term as 1 year, only 52 others as low as 2 years, only 76 others as low a term as 3 years, while those who were under sentences of 10 years and over numbered 538. Although 10 years, as the rolls show, is the utmost length of time that a convict can be expected to remain alive in the Georgia Penitentiary. 6 men were under sentence for simple assault and battery, mere fisticuffings. 1 of 2 years, 2 of 5 years, and 1 of 6 years, 1 of 7, and 1 of 8. For larceny, 3 men were serving under sentences of 20 years. 5 were sentenced each for 15 years, 1 for 14 years, 6 for 12 years, 35 for 10 years, and 172 from 1 year up to 9 years. In other words, a large majority of these 1,200 convicts had, for simple stealing without breaking in or violence, been virtually condemned to be worked and misused to death. 1 man was under a 20-year sentence for hog stealing. 12 men were sentenced to the South Carolina Penitentiary on no other finding but a misdemeanor commonly atoned for by a fine of a few dollars, and which thousands of the state's inhabitants, white, are constantly committing with impunity. The carrying of concealed weapons. 15 others were sentenced for mere assault and battery. In Louisiana, a man was sentenced to the penitentiary for 12 months for stealing $5 worth of gunny sacks. Out of 2,378 convicts in the Texas prison in 1882, only 2 were under sentence of less than 2 years' length, and 509 of these were under 20 years of age. Mississippi's penitentiary roll for the same year showed 70 convicts between the ages of 12 and 18 years of age serving long terms. Tennessee showed 12 boys under 18 years of age under sentences of more than a year, and the North Carolina penitentiary had 234 convicts under 20 years of age serving long terms. Mr. Cable goes on to say in another part of his admirable paper, quote unquote, in the Georgia convict force, only 15 were whites among 215 who were under sentences of more than 10 years. What is true of Georgia is true of the convict lease system everywhere. The details of vice, cruelty, and death thus fostered by the states whose treasuries are enriched thereby equals anything from Siberia. Men, women, and children are herded together like cattle in the filthiest quarters and chained together while at work. The Chicago Inter-Ocean recently printed an interview with a young colored woman who was sentenced 6 months to the convict farm in Mississippi for fighting. The costs, etc., lengthened the time to 18 months. During her imprisonment, she gave birth to 2 children, but lost the first one from premature confinement caused by being tied up by the thumbs and punished for failure to do a full day's work. She and other women testified that they were forced to criminal intimacy with the guards and cook to get food to eat.
Abolition. Today.